husband is very stingy. Since he bought his new car, he doesn't lend it to anyone. That wasn't right, so I lent it to my brother over a weekend while my husband was traveling, but my brother crashed it. Now I don't know what to do. He arrives tomorrow. When I married Ryan, I did so under the beautiful, sacred understanding that two people become one single soul and one single bank account. I have always been the kind of woman who gives everything to her partner, and naturally, I expect the same level of absolute transparency and shared access in return. We are a unit, a closed circuit where mine and thine simply shouldn't exist if the love is actually real. Lately, however, Ryan has been acting like he has a secret life, or at least a secret mistress made of metal and expensive paint. He bought this silver sedan 3 months ago, and honestly, the way he looks at it is borderline insulting to our marriage. It's just a machine, but he treats it like a holy relic that I'm not worthy enough to touch, let alone drive to the grocery store. Our relationship used to be based on the fact that I manage the domestic harmony while he provides the resources for our shared life. But ever since that car arrived, he's been obsessed with boundaries, a word that has no place in a committed, possessive love like ours. He spends his Saturday mornings wiping off invisible specks of dust with a microfiber cloth as if he's performing a ritual. He even bought a special cover for it, hiding it away from the world and from me, his own wife. I've tried to explain to him that his coldness toward sharing is actually a form of emotional withdrawal. If he can't trust me with the steering wheel, how can he say he trusts me with his heart? It feels like he's intentionally creating a divide just to see me struggle with the lack of control. The real tension started when my brother Leo needed a little help getting back on his feet after a rough patch. Leo is family, and in my world, family and marriage are intertwined branches that should support each other without question. He had a massive job interview across town, the kind of opportunity that could change his entire life, and his own car is basically a scrap heap on wheels. I asked Ryan, very sweetly, might I add, if Leo could borrow the sedan just for that one afternoon to make a good impression. Ryan didn't even look up from his phone before saying no, with a tone that was so dismissive it felt like a slap. He claimed Leo was irresponsible, which is just a mean-spirited way of saying my family isn't good enough for his precious status symbol. I spent the next 2 days feeling absolutely suffocated by Ryan's selfishness and his total lack of respect for my role as his partner. It wasn't just about the car, it was about the fact that he was intentionally keeping our resources away from people I love. I felt like it was my duty to intervene, not just for Leo's sake but to save Ryan from his own growing greed. A marriage cannot survive if one person is hoarding toys like a spoiled child while the other is trying to build a legacy. I knew that if I didn't take a stand, this stingy behavior would eventually infect every other part of our intimacy. I had to show him that I am the one who decides how our life is managed when it comes to the big picture. When Ryan announced he had a 3-day conference in the city and would be taking the train to avoid traffic, I saw it as a divine sign. It was the perfect window of opportunity to teach him a much-needed lesson about generosity and the fluidity of property in a marriage. As soon as his Uber pulled out of the driveway, I felt a rush of empowerment and rightful authority over my own home. I went straight to the key cabinet, feeling like a benevolent queen finally distributing wealth to the needy. I didn't feel like I was doing anything wrong because, technically, half of that car belongs to my sweat and tears too. I called Leo immediately and told him to come over, promising him the ride of his life for his interview. Leo was so grateful when I handed him the keys, and seeing his face light up made me feel like the supportive sister I've always strived to be. I told him to be careful, obviously, but I also told him to enjoy the feeling of a real car for once. I watched him drive away, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction that I was finally breaking Ryan's toxic cycle of hoarding. For those first few hours, I felt lighter than I had in months, convinced that I was doing the right thing for everyone involved. I even planned how I would tell Ryan later, framing it as a surprise success story for Leo that we both contributed to. It was going to be a turning point for our relationship, a moment of growth and shared pride. Then 3 hours ago, the universe decided to test me in the most unfair way possible. My phone rang, and it was Leo, sounding completely hysterical and barely making any sense. He told me he had rear-ended a truck on the highway because the brakes felt weird, which I honestly believe because Ryan probably hasn't been maintaining them properly. My heart dropped into my stomach, not because of the car, but because of how Ryan is going to overreact to this minor setback. Leo managed to limp the car back to our house while the sun was setting, and the sight of it nearly made me faint. The front hood is crumpled like a piece of discarded paper, and the headlights are shattered into a million jagged pieces of Ryan's ego. The worst part isn't even the visible damage, it's the horrible, violent sound the engine makes now. It sounds like someone threw a bag of nails into a blender, a mechanical screaming that I can still hear even with the garage door closed. The smell is even more aggressive, a thick, cloying stench of burnt oil and hot coolant that seems to be seeping through the walls of the house. I feel like the victim of a series of unfortunate events that were completely out of my control. If Ryan hadn't been so stingy in the first place, I wouldn't have had to go behind his back to do the right thing. This whole disaster is essentially his fault for creating a situation where I had to sneak around just to be a decent human being. I've spent the last 2 hours in a state of absolute bone-deep panic, trying to erase the evidence of this bad luck. I managed to guide Leo into the garage and shut the door before any of the neighbors could see and start gossiping like they always do. I've already gone through 3 entire cans of summer linen air freshener, spraying them until my index finger is literally cramping. The house smells like a chemical flower factory, but that oily metallic scent is still lingering underneath like a ghost. I feel so betrayed by the car itself. How could something so expensive be so fragile and break during such a simple, well-intentioned errand? It's almost like the car wanted to spite me for giving Leo a chance. Now I'm sitting here in the dark, watching the clock tick down like a bomb that I didn't even set. Ryan's flight lands in 10 hours, and he'll be walking through that door expecting his perfect little world to be intact. He doesn't understand the pressure I'm under, or the fact that I was only trying to help our family grow. I'm shaking so hard I can barely hold my phone, and every little noise outside sounds like his footsteps on the driveway. I need a plan, but my brain is just a mess of summer linen. And Leo's frantic apologies. I just keep telling myself that if Ryan really loved me, the car wouldn't even matter compared to the stress I'm feeling right now. Main story comments. Anonymous user 1 says, you realize you literally stole his car, right? Taking someone's property without permission is grand theft auto, even if you share a bed. You've probably ruined your marriage and your brother's life in one afternoon. Ops reply, it isn't theft when you are legally and spiritually one person. But I wouldn't expect someone who doesn't understand true devotion to get that. Ryan is the one stealing my peace of mind and my right to a collaborative life by being so selfish with a piece of metal. Anonymous user 2 says, why isn't Leo stepping up? He crashed it. He should be the one calling insurance and paying the deductible instead of letting you shake in the dark. Ops reply, Leo is struggling and doesn't have a cent to his name, which is exactly why I was trying to help him in the first place. Ryan has the high-paying job and the premium insurance, so he's the only one who can actually fix this without it becoming a financial tragedy for my family. Update 1. Been 24 hours since my last update, and I feel like I've aged 10 years in a single day. Ryan got home from his conference around 8 a.m. and he didn't even drop his bags before heading straight toward the garage. I intercepted him in the hallway, practically throwing myself at him and bursting into tears to set the emotional tone for the conversation. I told him through my sobs that something horrible had happened and that a drunk driver must have hit the car while it was parked on the street yesterday. I made sure to emphasize how traumatized I was to find it like that, making the story about my emotional distress rather than the actual mechanical damage. I told him I had bravely moved it inside to protect what was left of it from further vandalism. Ryan didn't react the way a normal, loving husband should. He didn't even try to comfort me or ask if I was okay after such a shock. He just pushed past me with this chilling, blank stare that made my blood run cold, as if he were a robot instead of a man. He opened the garage door and the smell of summer linen hit him like a wall, causing him to immediately start sneezing violently. Instead of seeing my effort to keep the house smelling fresh, he looked at me with pure irritation, complaining about his allergies while his car sat there looking like a mangled corpse. He didn't yell or scream, which was actually much more terrifying. He just spent 2 entire hours silently circling the vehicle. He was inspecting every scratch and every drop of fluid on the floor as if he were a forensic investigator trying to catch me in a lie. I stood in the doorway the whole time, trying to keep the narrative alive by mentioning how aggressive the phantom drunk driver must have been. I told him the neighborhood is becoming so dangerous and that we really need to think about moving if people can just destroy property like this. Every time I spoke, he just ignored me, his eyes fixed on the crumpled hood and the leaking radiator. It was so incredibly disrespectful to see him prioritize a pile of bolts over the words of his wife who was clearly in a state of crisis. He eventually went to the kitchen and started making a phone call in a low, hushed voice that I couldn't quite hear over the sound of my own heart beating. I feel like he's intentionally freezing me out to punish me for something that was clearly just a run of bad luck. The summer linen scent is still hanging heavy in the air, and every time he sneezes now he shoots me a look of pure accusation. I told him he should be grateful I was even home to move the car inside before the criminal could come back for more. He just sat at the dining table for hours, staring at his laptop and refusing to eat the dinner. I spent an hour preparing for him. It's so typical of him to make everything about his own loss, never considering the mental toll this situation is taking on me. I'm the one who had to deal with Leo's breakdown and the logistics of hiding the damage, but I get zero credit for my management skills. I'm still waiting for him to apologize for his coldness, but he's acting like I'm the one who did something wrong. Update 1 comments. Anonymous user 1 says you're literally committing insurance fraud by lying about a drunk driver. If Ryan files a police report and they find out it was your brother, you could both end up in prison. Ops reply, it's called a little white lie, to keep the peace in a marriage that is already strained by his extreme stinginess. I'm protecting our stability and quite frankly the insurance company has more money than they know what to do with anyway. Anonymous user 2 says your logic is full of holes. If a car is hit while parked on the street, it doesn't usually start leaking engine fluids in the garage 3 hours later. Ryan isn't stupid. He knows something is up. OP's reply, why is everyone on this thread trying to be a detective instead of supporting a woman who is clearly in distress? Cars leak things when they're broken. It doesn't matter where they were hit, and your logic is just an excuse to be mean to me. Update 2. It's been 3 days since my last update, and the atmosphere in this house has become absolutely toxic and unbearable. Ryan finally decided to take action by checking the dashcam footage to see if he could identify the drunk driver's license plate. Luckily, I had anticipated his obsession with surveillance, and I had already pulled the SD card from the camera and snapped it into 3 pieces before he even got home. When he asked where it was, I told him with total confidence that the camera must have been corrupted by the impact or the heat. He looked at the broken plastic in my hand and something in him just snapped, but not in a way that involved a healthy release of emotion. He didn't hit anything or raise his voice, he just became this cold, distant version of himself that I don't even recognize anymore. He stood there in the garage looking at the broken card and told me that since I clearly can't keep his property safe, things were going to change immediately. I thought he meant he was going to buy a better security system, but instead he did something truly monstrous and unforgivable. He went out and bought a high-tech smart lock and installed it on his home office door right in front of me. This is the room where he keeps his important documents and his spare keys, and now he has literally locked his own wife out of a part of our shared home. I felt so incredibly betrayed, standing there watching him exclude me from his life as if I were a common thief or a stranger. I tried to tell him that this was financial abuse and emotional stonewalling, but he just locked the door and walked away. I spent the rest of the afternoon crying and banging on the door, demanding that he treat me with the respect a wife deserves. I was trying to teach him a lesson about sharing and generosity, and his response was to build more walls and hide more things from me. It's so ironic that he's the one acting like a victim when I'm the one being evicted from my own husband's inner circle. He even changed the passwords on our shared streaming accounts, claiming he needed to simplify his digital life for a while. I know he's just trying to exert control over me because he's mad about a car that he didn't even use every day. It's a total lack of trust that is poisoning the very foundation of what we built together, and I won't stand for being treated like an outsider. Leo has been texting me constantly, asking if the drunk driver story worked, and I've had to tell him to stop because Ryan is being so aggressive. I told Leo to stay away for a while because Ryan's energy is too volatile, and I don't want my brother to be a target of his misplaced anger. Ryan is now spending all his time in that locked office, probably plotting more ways to distance himself from the person who loves him most. I even tried to make him his favorite brownies to bridge the gap, but he just left them on the counter to get stale without even saying thank you. I am the true victim here, trapped in a house with a man who values a silver sedan more than his own marriage or his wife's dignity. Update 2 comments. Anonymous user 1 says Ryan is 100% right to lock his office. You've proven you'll take his keys and destroy his electronics to cover up your lies. He's protecting himself from your generosity. Ops reply, you are just another enabler of financial abuse if you think it's okay for a man to lock his wife out of her own home. Everything in his house is a joint asset, and his protection is just a fancy word for being a controlling jerk. Anonymous user 2 says, is Leo actually going to confess? He's a grown man who crashed a car and is letting his sister take the heat with a bunch of crazy lies. OP's reply, Leo is laying low because Ryan's current energy is far too aggressive and irrational for a productive conversation. My brother is a sensitive soul, and I'm not going to throw him to the wolves just because Ryan is having a tantrum over a bumper. Update 3. It's been 1 week since my last update, and the boomerang of Ryan's cruelty has finally hit me in the most devastating way possible. He didn't call the police like I feared, but he did something much more calculated and sneaky by calling his brother, who happens to be a professional mechanic. His brother came over and did a full autopsy on the car, and while he was vacuuming out the glass, he found Leo's favorite lime green vape pen wedged deep under the passenger seat. I didn't even know Leo had that stupid thing with him, and I feel so betrayed that my own brother's carelessness was what gave us away. Ryan didn't even confront me immediately. He waited until he had gathered more evidence, like some sort of amateur private eye. Last night he sat me down at the kitchen table and didn't say a single word for 5 minutes, just staring at me with that same robotic, empty expression. Then he took out his phone and played a screen recording of Leo's Instagram story from the night of the crash. Apparently, my sensitive brother thought it was a great idea to post a video of himself flying in Ryan's whip with the speedometer visible and loud music playing. The timestamp on the post was exactly 20 minutes before the drunk driver allegedly hit the car on our quiet street. My heart shattered, not because I was caught, but because Ryan looked at me with such pure, unadulterated disgust that I felt like a bug he wanted to squash. He told me that my attempt to teach him generosity was actually just a pathetic display of manipulation and theft. The worst part, the part that proves Ryan is a literal monster, is what he did next to settle the score. He told me that since I believe what's his is mine, he decided to apply that exact same logic to my personal savings account. He has access to it for emergencies, and he decided that his car's depreciation and repair costs were the ultimate emergency. He transferred my entire personal emergency fund money I've been saving for years to pay the insurance deductible and the massive loss of value the car suffered. I screamed at him that he was stealing from me, but he just shrugged and said he was sharing our resources, just like I wanted. It is the most cold-blooded, hypocritical thing I've ever experienced in my entire life, and I'm still reeling from the shock. I tried to explain that money is just paper and that family is forever, but he didn't want to hear anything about my values or my perspective. He's acting like I'm a criminal, when I was literally just trying to be a bridge between him and my brother. Leo won't even answer my calls now because he's too stressed by the drama, leaving me to face Ryan's financial terrorism all by myself. I spent all night packing a bag, but then I realized I have nowhere to go because he took all my liquid assets to fix a car that still smells like summer linen. I am honestly considering leaving him for good because I cannot live with a bean counter who puts a price tag on loyalty. He has completely ruined the sanctity of our marriage over a silver sedan and a few white lies that wouldn't have been necessary if he wasn't so stingy. Update 3 comments. Anonymous user 1 says, play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Ryan, using your savings to fix the car you let your brother destroy is the most poetic justice I've ever seen on this site. Ops reply, you people are obsessed with justice, but you clearly have no idea what it means to be in a real partnership. Money is replaceable, but the way he is treating me like a business transaction is a sin that can never be forgiven. Anonymous user 2 says, are you actually leaving, or is this just more drama? It sounds like Ryan is the one who should be calling a divorce lawyer after all the gaslighting you've put him through. Ops reply, I am the one who is actually considering leaving because I cannot live with a man who keeps a ledger of every mistake instead of offering grace. He's a monster who thinks a bank balance is more important than his wife's emotional well-being. Update 4. It's been 2 weeks since my last update, and my entire life has completely collapsed into a pile of ash and summer linen-scented regret. Ryan is officially moving out today, and the house feels like a tomb that I'm being buried in alive. He didn't even give me a chance to explain how his retaliation with my savings account made us even. He just handed me a folder of divorce papers and walked away. But the true, ultimate stingy move, the one that proves he never truly loved me, happened yesterday afternoon. I went out to the driveway to clear my head and I realized my own car, the little SUV that his parents helped us buy as a wedding gift, was gone. I called him in a panic and he told me with the coldest voice imaginable that he had sold it to a private buyer for cash. Because we had put the car in his name for insurance purposes when we got married, he legally had the right to sell it without my signature. He told me that since I'm so incredibly fond of sharing and communal property, I can go ahead and share the city bus with Leo from now on. I am currently sitting on the curb of my own empty driveway, smelling like a mix of grease and chemical flowers, with a bus pass in my hand and a heart full of bitterness. Leo won't even pick up his phone to give me a ride to the grocery store because he says my drama has ruined his reputation. I tried to do one good thing for my family and one teaching moment for my husband, and now I have absolutely nothing left to show for it. I'm looking at a divorce lawyer's website on my phone, but I can't even afford the consultation fee because Ryan drained my account for his precious sedan repairs. It's so unfair that he gets to walk away with a fixed car and a new life while I'm stuck here being punished for having a big heart. He even took the summer linen air fresheners with him, probably just to spite me one last time before he disappears forever. I can't believe I spent years of my life with a man who would throw it all away just because I wanted him to be a better, more generous person. My plan to make Ryan more open and loving has left me with a bus schedule and a house that feels like a prison. I guess this is what happens when you try to bring light to someone who is determined to live in the dark, stingy corner of their own ego.